Alright team, welcome back to another vlog, and today we're talking about warm-ups. Warm-up routines, should you warm up, why should you warm up, how should you warm up? And obviously we're going to keep this in relation to more resistance-based activity, more strength-based work, because that is what we're about here on this channel. So I'm just going to do a bit of a voiceover, and I'm going to let the material play. I'm going to talk over the top of it, so you can actually see some of the things that I do and some of the things that I talk about, you can see live in demonstration. So when we look at warming up, we are literally doing just that. Okay, so we are warming up the body, we are increasing the body's temperature. And by doing that, we're increasing the body's what we call viscosity. So if we think about the body as a car for a moment, when we start the car, the oil starts to get round, the engine starts to get warm, etc. Everything starts to get lubricated. It's a lot safer, it's a lot more high performance, it's going to be able to do what you want it to do. If you look at the extremity of that, if you look at a racing car, you have to warm up the car. You can't just bang, balls out, go hard straight away. It just won't work, it won't perform at its best. And that's the same when you're asking your body to do something that's above average, right? So every day we can just sort of get up and you can do some light activities, but when you want to lift some weights, you're performing at a higher level. So you almost need to, again, like the racing car, you need to warm that car up. Now, I feel like a lot of people either do too much warming up or not enough warming up. And there's no necessarily right or wrong, because it depends on the athlete, depends on the individual, it depends on the sport, the given task. But we're going to keep a few things in mind. So the first thing is we just want to warm up, so increase the body temperature. So for example, depending on where you live in the world, if you live in a colder country or you've got a colder gym environment, you might have to do a little bit more. It might be as simple as doing some light cardio to warm the actual body up and increase blood flow, if that is necessary, depending on where you're at. Or personally, I recommend two things primarily, especially for strength training, and that is dynamic stretches, so movement-based stretches, and then also activation work. So when we look at dynamic stretches, we look at movement-based, so stretches that are not static, they're not being held. A couple of points on those. So your dynamic stretches, the reason why they are better is because based on what we know from the literature and from the evidence, movement-based stretch is going to reduce the risk of injury and it's going to increase performance because it doesn't overstretch the muscle, but it still stimulates it, and it still keeps some of those elastic qualities like the stretch shortening reflex in the tendons and the muscles, so we can use them. And it also starts to move us through specific ranges of motion, which we're going to try and replicate when we work out. Static stretching, so overstretching a muscle or stretching it over 30 seconds, generally from what we know, can actually decrease strength. So like an elastic band, if you overstretch it, it loses that sort of spring back component. And again, if you overstretch an elastic band, it's more likely to snap. Your muscles will not snap per se, but it's easier to pull a muscle or strain a muscle, and it can take up to 72 hours, or it may take up to 72 hours for maximal strength to return, or that tensile strength in the muscle. So I would recommend dynamic stretches based around movements that you're going to do. So here I'm doing some more foam rolling, so this is more like activation or prehab, if you like, preventive rehabilitation. I'm literally just stimulating blood flow. It can be referred to as literally myofascial release, which is literally just releasing muscle fibers from the fascia, which is surrounding the muscle bellies, if you like, and stimulating blood flow. When you foam roll, you want to make sure that you're foam rolling across the cross-sectional area, so across the muscle bellies themselves. You don't want to roll over the insertion or origin point. So what I mean by that is you don't want to be rolling over the joints, etc. You want to keep it between the muscle. Okay, so if I was rolling my tricep, I might roll it from sort of here at the bottom or the insertion, or I might even get the delt involved and roll all the way down, but it'll be quite light. It's not really a common one to foam roll. You're looking at more of your bigger muscle groups, as you can see here. Rolling out the quads, the hamstrings, the IT bands, etc. I like to do my back, erector spinae, etc. I don't do too much these days. Generally just sort of do 5 to 10 rolls per muscle group, if you like, or across each area of the muscle. And I find that just for me, it's not so much to release tension in muscle fibers like massage. It's more about just creating blood flow and stimulating that muscle group and saying, hey, look, this is, I'm going to work out, this is what I'm going to do. Dynamic stretches, again, think about specificity, okay? If you're gonna do lower body, let's open some hips up. So let's do some leg swings, let's do horizontal planes, vertical planes, etc. It doesn't have to be anything major. 15 to 30, 10 to 15, whatever it is, increase that pace over time. And as you increase your body temperature and that viscosity, it's almost like that car's getting going, right? You're increasing that sort of lubrication around the body and that performance. And that's sometimes when, you might have started training in the past and you've gone, oh, I don't feel like I feel a bit stiff, feel a bit sore, but by the end of the session or a few sets in, you feel really good because you've warmed up. Then activation work. So after foam rolling, activation work just suggests you activating muscle groups that you're going to use. So again, you can use a multitude of things. I usually use, again, movements that are sport specific or specific to the movements that I'm going to be doing. So here I've got a band. It's nothing magic. I got these bands when I was competing. You can use all different rubber bands, there's different tensions, etc. You can use dumbbells, whatever it is. Bands are great because, again, they're elasticity, like big elastic bands, I should say. So you can move them through different ranges of motion and you can change the tension, and the tension's constant throughout the movement and it just changes. I like to do personally, and this is specific to me, I like to do a little bit of rotator cuff work. If I'm doing upper body, I don't do loads. I find you can antagonize it. So I like to move through different ranges of motion, so I can use different parts of the shoulder girdle and the rotator cuff just to increase that sort of mobility through that area. This is something that for me, because I've had a little bit of niggle on the right shoulder, nothing too major, but I find if I do this, it warms it up, it strengthens it from some physio that I've done in the past, and this warm-up works for me. And that's what you should be looking for, guys. Looking at something that works for you. It's not too long, it's not too short, but it's adequate that you can perform well and you don't have any niggles and you don't get any injuries and you continue increasing performance over time. So my warm-up, including working sets, probably takes maximum 10 minutes, which is not a lot to ask considering I've been training for quite a few years and the weights that I'm lifting are a little bit heavier than a beginner, so I'm obviously working my way up. Working through different ranges of motion, okay, with these bands. So I'm doing full upper body on this particular day. I did some lower body foam rolling there for you. I would replicate this if I was doing lower body with the dynamic stretches. So I'd be doing those leg swings like I was talking to you about. I'd be doing some step back lunges. I might even do some plyometric jumps just to increase the explosiveness of the muscle fibers, to really get them overworking, if you like, without impacting my performance. And then I might even do some body weight squats or sit in that squat stance. Again, I'm trying to replicate what I'm doing. So once you've done your dynamic stretches, RE, or your activation work out, or both, which I would suggest, think about specificity is key, guys. If you're gonna squat, warm up with squats, warm up with squat variations, okay? If you're gonna do bench press, warm up with the bench press or bench press variations. So it really is that simple. Always think about specificity when you're looking at warming up. Never try and just go heavy or relative to what you're lifting. Never try and go to your working weight straight away. That can stunt your strength, that can cause injury. You always wanna work up in percentages. So for example, if I'm doing the bench press here today, and say I'm working with, I think it was 105 kg, I'm gonna start with 60 kilos on the bar. Okay, I've already done my dynamic stretches, so I've replicated a flying or a pressing motion with those, so I've pumped the blood in the muscle, I'm fairly warm, I'm mobile, and then I'll do 60 kg and I might do 8 reps or so, and then I'll go to 80 and I might do 6, and then I'll go to 100 and I'll do 4, and then I like to go a little bit heavier, so I might go 110 for 2, 120 for 1, and then back off, back down. And that is what works for me. I always like to warm up a little bit heavier. It gives me a psychological and a physiological advantage because I've worked heavier. When I go back to my working set, it feels lighter, and also it allows me to just see where strengths are a little bit, again, without a detriment to performance or without overworking and burning myself out on the warm-ups. So when it comes to warm-ups, guys, to recap, keep it specific, okay? Keep it specific, keep it simple. Dynamic stretches are the way to go. Static stretches are great, but keep them away, okay? So after or at another time in the day, away from your workout, a couple of hours away, just because again, static stretches, they're going to overstretch the muscle fibers. That's going to take some time to recover from. You don't want to overstretch when you're about to perform something which requires some sort of power, which requires you to recruit muscle fibers, and you want that power, that stretch reflex response when you're generating force. Activation work, so again, depending on you, look at activating muscle groups that you need to use for given exercises. So for people who are more sedentary or have got a desk job, you might have to do a little bit more because you've been sat down all day, you've not been moving, your muscle fibers might not be as active. Okay, everyone's going to be different as well. You might have injuries, you might have some physio, etc. And then keep it sport specific, guys. Keep it specific to what you're doing. Don't overcomplicate it. It's really simple. And this is just a basic example of what you can see here. When it comes to cooling down, that's another story for another time. If you're a strength-based athlete, it's a little bit different. You generally don't have to do too much cool down work. That's when your static stretches may become of use. If you are more of a cardiovascular or a sport-specific athlete, this is where, again, some cool down routines and rehabilitation work can come in at the end, like your hot and cold contrast recovery baths. Again, it comes to peri and post-workout nutrition, but I'm gonna make another video completely on that. This one was more just warming up. I've kept this one really brief and really simple, guys, purely based on the fact that it doesn't have to be complicated, and it isn't. And especially for lifting weights, keep it simple, listen to your body. If it works, okay? You don't need these 20-minute elaborate warm-ups. You don't need to do every bloody rehab, prehab, banded bloody exercise in the gym, and at the same time you don't just want to be jumping there with weights. So find that balance, guys. As always, any questions or queries, pop them in the comments below. Like the video if you like the video, of course. Make sure you subscribe for weekly vlogs, and share this around with someone who you think would find this helpful. And thanks for the support, team, and as always, until next week, I will see you then. Stay fearless.